So welcome to this episode of Locked In. This is going to be the first part in my little 2021 budget-friendly bikepacking series where I'm going to be going over my separate systems that I'm going to be using for the rest of this year for future bikepacking trips that we'll be putting on this channel. So if that's something you want to see, please make sure to subscribe and like this video if you haven't already. So in this overview, I'm going to be going over the items, rough specs, price, and weight, and why I quickly picked those items. This is by no means a full review. If you want to see that, those will be coming later, so make sure to turn the notifications on so you can see those when they come out. But let's get started with my sleeping pad. Now this is the Trekology UL sleeping pad. It's directly from Amazon, and full disclosure, I did actually have a 2.5-inch ultralight pad that I did use, but I never got great sleep, so I said, you know what, maybe let's try going with a thicker pad since I am a side sleeper, and I've been really happy with this pad. Now this pad comes in at $39.99 right now on Amazon, and I couldn't be happier with it. I've had great sleep on it since I started using it. That extra 2 inches really does make a difference when you're trying to get comfortable sleep, especially if you're a light sleeper like I am. I am 5'11" and have no problems with this pad as far as lengthwise or width, and I'm about 185 pounds. The stated weight for this pad is 750 grams, but you can see it here on my scales and how much it weighed for me. And as far as the overall dimensions, it is 77 inches long by 22.4 inches wide. The other thing I really do like about it is the valve on it, and it is very easy to use and easy to inflate since it's a one-way valve, so you don't have to worry about the air escaping quickly, and then you can pull the entire valve open to easily get the air out of the system. That's a big thing with my other sleeping pad. It took forever to really pull all the air out of it. This escapes very quickly as long as you roll it from the foot end to the valve, and I've never had this thing leak on me or go flat overnight. So now let's get into the other part of my sleep system, which is the Nature Hike pillow. Now this is something that I bought, and I know some ultralight bikepackers or backpackers are gonna say, oh, just roll up your jacket or clothes you don't wear into a little duffel bag and use that as a pillow. But honestly, most of the time when I go bikepacking, I usually only have one set of clothes, and so my cycling kit or anything I would put in there is typically drying out overnight. And especially if it is colder, I might be wearing my jacket that I could use as a sleeping bag. So I wanted to invest in a pillow, and this thing is super light and super small. And I did get this from Amazon as well. This is a Nature Hike product, and the other two items are as well. I actually purchased this with my own money. Same with the Trekology pad. I've really enjoyed using this. It has a nice kind of soft texture to it, so it doesn't make a lot of noise when on your sleeping pad when you're moving around if you toss and turn a lot at night like I do. This is stated at 86 grams, and you can see the weight of it on my scale. And this is gonna come in at a retail price of 18 bucks, but it is on sale right now on Nature Hike's website for $15. The one thing I have to say is, when I lay on my side, I'll put the pillow lengthwise so that the thicker end cradles my neck. And as far as overall size goes, at the widest point for this pillow, it is at 15.5 inches, and then it's about 10 inches here in the middle. Next, we're going to talk about my Nature Hike down lightweight envelope sleeping bag. This is not the compressed version of this. This is actually stored in the stuff sack they actually give you. Any kind of down sleeping bag, you're actually not supposed to compress it and leave it like that for the off season or when you store it for long term. This is going to keep it nice and fluffy and aerated, but they do provide you a compression sack that you can stuff this in very easily to bring obviously the overall size down. Now the reason I went with this is because the original sleeping bag that I did have was just too small for me. Again, I'm 5'11", and it would only go up to about my armpit, and so I couldn't kind of fully envelop myself. So especially on colder nights, I'd get really cold, or I'd have to make sure that I had a thick jacket on to basically cover everything that was exposed. So I wanted to go with a little bit bigger of a bag, and this is the large size, and it touching the ground, you can see it's actually taller than I am. So even if you're over 6 foot, this is gonna be no problem. And with the width here, you can see it's wider than my shoulders. So this is fully gonna envelop you, especially on colder nights. And since it is like an envelope style, you can actually open it up. So you can use it basically like a blanket. So if you do have someone you are sharing a tent with, you can share this as just a blanket between the two of you, or simply zip it back up for a warmer, obviously, sleep for one person. Now the temperature range that they actually list on here that's stated for the bag is gonna be a comfort rating of 42.8 Fahrenheit or 6 degrees Celsius, down to a risk temperature of 14 degrees, which I definitely wouldn't camp in general, but the middle rating they're gonna put for the transitional phase, what they call it, is gonna be 32 degrees. And the nice thing I do like is, even though this is a more affordable sleeping bag compared to a lot of other ones that are on the market, they actually do use quality YKK zippers, so you don't have to worry about them. Now this bag was provided to me from Nature Hike, but I'm by no means paid by them to say anything good about it. But I'm really excited to try this out because it's just a lot easier and bigger, and I prefer a blanket style. I wanted to try a quilt, but I figured this was kind of the happy medium that I could use while camping, so that I can basically have something that's great for the summer in a open blanket style, or obviously zip it up when it is in the cooler, more winter months, especially depending on where I'm going to be camping out. So I figured this is a great versatile camping bag. And even though I am in California, there are parts of the desert that do get into those lower temperatures that I think with a jacket compared to this at that transitional comfort rate of 30 degrees, I think I'd be okay with this. Again, still bundled up besides just the bag. And the weight rated for that bag is gonna be 1.74 pounds, but you can see here what it ended up on my scales in the dry stuff sack that it comes with. And the sleeping bag is retailed at $185, but is currently on sale on their website for $135. Now, last but not least, my tent system that I'm going with. Now, full disclosure and a little bit of background, I actually did use a Nature Hike Cloud tent in all my previous camping that I did on and off the bike last year and a little bit in the year before, and I'll link to the video of my weekend bikepacking trip in the description below, so you can watch that after, when I did camp in Upper Morro in Crystal Cove in California, and had no issues with that tent and all the other camping trips that I did with it after that trip. Now, the quality of the tent's been fine. They did update that tent this year, and I reached out to Nature Hike and they provided me this tent again, as well as a sleeping bag, but I'm still by no means paid by them to do this. But I'm really happy with the updates they have made to the original tent to the Cloud Up version. So they do offer this tent in a 1, 2, or 3 person. The version specifically that I have is the 20D Gray Cloud Up 1. That's what I really wanted. Obviously, it's gonna be the smallest and lightest weight version of this style of tent. But again, check their website in the description below for more details and all the options they have for this series, because there are a lot, but the basic features are gonna always be there. Just obviously the size and weight of the tent is gonna vary. So this is a semi-freestanding tent, meaning that you can actually not have to stake it down if you don't want to. And I wanted that just because there is a lot of beach camping in California. So I wanted something I could basically stake down with just, setting some rocks on the corners of the tent if needed, or anything like that where there wasn't anything physically hard to stake into. Really did want to try a trekking pole tent out, but maybe next season. But as far as this tent goes, it sets up very, very easily. It's very similar to the other tent I had, but the overall dimensions for the Cloud Up 1 are a overall length of 230 centimeters, and that is not including the vestibule in the front there, and a width of 110 centimeters with a max height of 100 centimeters. And I have plenty of room in this tent at my height, but I would say if you're over 6'1", it may be extra tight. But if you actually look at the other two versions, this is actually the longest version of this tent. So if you are a taller person and want a multi-person version of this, I maybe stick to staying with the single person. Now, there isn't a ton of width in there, but it'd be plenty of space for you to fit all your bikepacking bags or any additional items for a few days. But if you're going for a multi-day excursion and carrying a lot of stuff that you want to put physically in the tent with you for whatever reason, there isn't a massive expanse of space in there. You may want to go with the 2-person. But with what I typically bring for the trips I like doing, this is by no means any kind of issues. You do have 2 small side pockets internally that you can store a few different items, and a loop at the top so you can hang a headlight or a camp light into the tent to illuminate it at night. Now, the system is essentially 3 different parts. There's your ground sheet, then your tent body, and then your fly that goes on top of it. Now, you don't necessarily need to have the fly on there, so if it is a warm night or warmer in the area, or you just want the extra breeze in your tent, you don't have to run the fly, and you can obviously save some weight there. Now, the ground sheet I may or may not use. I may experiment with some lighter weight different options, since in the areas I typically camp in, I'm not really worried about the bottom of the tent getting punctured, but obviously that's going to keep the longevity and durability of the tent lasting longer than normal. And my original tent, I've never had anything protrude, and I did actually use the ground sheet the entire year, but never felt like I really had to. So as far as the 2 other updates compared to my original version, mainly it's going to be in the ventilation that they have at the front. They have this clever little stick that basically holds an extra vent in the front above the vestibule to get better airflow through the tent to help with condensation. Never really had that big of an issue with the initial one, but on some mornings when it would be kind of dewy or humid out, you might have some to where I'd have to shake the fly out to make sure that I didn't trap any moisture in it that would stay in the bag for the following day. As well as they have upgraded the tie downs. They are a little bit nicer and easier to use and easier to cinch down, and they actually do give you some extras so that you can obviously bring them with you in case something does break on the trail, can easily fix those, and you get some extras in the kit. But setting this up and staking it down isn't really hard. They even have some basic instructions that are provided in the stuff sack. And no, this is not a bikepacking specific tent. And the main thing that I would say that you're gonna notice that compared to other models that are gonna be twofold. One, storage options aren't gonna be as bike friendly. The small side pockets I wish were a little bit bigger. And the tent poles. The big thing that you're going to notice with tent poles with bikepacking specific compared to non-bikepacking ones are just the overall length. Now, these are going to come in at 16 inches or right about 40 centimeters. So if you are running a 44 or smaller handlebar and you want to put these kind of right in line with that, probably wouldn't. I would basically say if you're running a handlebar roll, you probably want to put them at the bottom where hopefully your bars flare out a little bit to give you a little bit more space. So you're gonna have to consider where to put these in a frame bag, but if you're a smaller rider, this is where it does get difficult. Could strap them to the top side of your seat bag or saddle bag as well. So you're gonna have to be a little bit more creative of where to put the tent poles, because typically bike packing ones usually come in closer to that 12-inch size. So that's the only thing to really consider. But again, this is a more budget-friendly series and episode, and these are the compromises you make to save the money over something a little bit lighter and a little bit more convenient. And that's gonna lead me into price for this tent. The price for my tent currently is retailed at $160, but is currently on sale on their website for $134. So that's my entire sleep system, minus one last thing, which is gonna be a set of earplugs. Now this is something that I learned the hard way on my first bikepacking trip, because there was a lot of frogs in this lake that was by us, and they made a ton of noise at night and I couldn't sleep. So we went to the drugstore, picked up a baggie of these, and I always carry a set of these in my sleep system, and I usually will throw a couple other ones loosely in my bags or handlebar bag as well, because it's something that if you ever go with other friends, they're gonna appreciate that you have a set. But this is something that I definitely would recommend. It does really help with the quality of sleep. But those are all my bikepacking items. Now, yes, are there more affordable options out there? 100%. Can you go camp tenting with the tent you have somewhere in your garage that you've had for 20 years? Absolutely. I'm by no means saying you can't do that. These are just all my things that I found that, in my opinion, struck a perfect balance of price, weight, and quality or usability in my experience and all the research that I've done. Now, yes, I don't have any overnight sleeps in the tent specifically, even though I do have one in the prior generation, and I haven't slept physically in the sleeping bag, but it's a sleeping bag, and as long as it's somewhat warm, and it'll probably be okay. But again, I wanted to find the balance of something that was quality enough that I've had experience with the Nature Hike brand, and finding things that work well on somewhat of a budget. And like I said, yes, you can get a tent for $50. Yes, you can get a sleeping pad for $20. The pillow at $15, there's maybe a cheaper option, or you can just use a jacket that you already have, but that probably costs more than $15. And then the sleeping bag, yes, you can get one as cheap as $40, and that's what I originally got. I think it was $40 or $60, but again, it was very, very light and very, very thin, which works okay in California. The size just didn't work for me, so maybe there would have been another option, but I think this is gonna be a bag that will work well in other scenarios, so that I'm not limited by my equipment for safety or how warm I can be at night. So that's really where I think this setup really does work pretty well. But let me know in the comments below if you have reviews for these items yourself, or have used them, or other ones that you would suggest. But I'm really excited to show off the next part in this series, which is gonna be my cook system and some small little accessories that I use around camp. So make sure to subscribe and like this video if you haven't already. I really would appreciate it. And you can follow me on Facebook and Instagram, or help support the channel via Spreadshirt or Pateron, where I sell my Slow But Look Pro merchandise. As well as for my Patreons, I offer a one-on-one cycling consultation every single month for my top 2 tier levels. And lastly, thanks for watching this episode of Locked In.
Let's get locked in.